Good morning, I'm Terry Denson, and this is Introduction to Aquabord. This is for those of you who have been thinking about trying Aquabord, but a little bit unconcerned, a little concerned because you don't really know how it works or what it does. So that's the primary purpose of this video this morning. We're going to cover basic stuff like laying a wash, laying a smooth wash, a transition, because it all works very different on Aquabord. Now let's take a look at Aquabord. What it is a layer of textured kaolin clay that's been put over top of a board like masonite. The paint sits up on top of the textured clay, so it doesn't really sink in. And as a result, it gives you the advantage of being able to lift back, in most cases, all the way to the white of the Aquabord. There are a few evil twins out there in the paint world, phthalo blue and phthalo green, for example, that will leave a faint stain on it. In general, though, most of them will wash off with just a little bit of rubbing. What I use to do that with is a small, flat brush, a little bit on the stiff side, but not too much, that all glaze together quite nicely. This is actually a children's art brush, and you could find these at hobby stores, at hardware stores, and other places like that. Now, Aquabord comes in 3 varieties. This flavor is flat, obviously, just a panel with a clay coating. And the advantage of flat, you paint it, you frame it up as if it was an art painting. These are all varnished first, and I'll go into that towards the end. But it also comes in 2 other formats. One format is with a cradle built onto it. This is made out of nicely sanded bare beech wood. It's 3/4 of an inch deep. The third variety is also cradled with a 2-inch cradle on it. This is the natural beech one that I've varnished with a simple varnish, water soluble. You can get it at any hardware store. No odor, easy cleanup, nice way to handle varnishing. That, by the way, is the type that's acceptable for the Florida Watercolor Society show now. As of the 2020 exhibit, varnished paintings, this, for example, Aquabord that are sprayed, are eligible to be entered without glass or matting. And that's one of the big advantages of Aquabord. People like, customers particularly like paintings without the glass, because they don't get the reflections you would get in something like this. So let's start on what we have here. I've already put down 2 washes. This is just a simple little drawing of 3 apples, 3 green apples, and this is my undercolor here. I have a simple shadow down here, and then I'm going to paint a darker background, right about here. Let's just draw a line. Now you can draw your image directly onto the clay board, Aquabord, or you can transfer it with routine carbonless, oil-free carbon paper, transfer paper. I prefer this type of pencil, the mechanical pencil, because it has a much finer point, it's not as smudgy, it's easier to clean up. And after I do my drawing, the next step I do is to roll eraser, one of these kneaded erasers over it, especially if I've used transfer paper, in order to pick up extra carbon. Doesn't show through the paint that way. Especially important with transparent paints, because otherwise you'll see it quite easily. Now, when you open up your package, there's going to be a paper inside of it, and it's going to tell you that you need to paint your Aquabord with water before you ever start. And the reason for this is that the clay is porous. Very thin, but it does have a porous coating. As a result, there are some air bubbles down in there. And the purpose of this is to get those air bubbles out. This one's already been done, there aren't many in it, but in some pieces you'll see it really bubbly. And if you just painted without getting that out, you'd have little white speckles all through your paint. Sometimes that's interesting, and sometimes it's not at all what you want. And they will show through with subsequent layers. If you do this and you still get bubbles, just keep going until you can work them all out. It's really not that big a deal. Now, these are 5x7 panels, but Aquabord comes in a variety of sizes. 24x36 is the largest one I know that has been made. Most of the big box art stores carry a number of different sizes of the Aquabord, down as small as the 5x5. The 24x36 is a little more difficult to come by, but you might be able to special order it. And if you become a real enthusiast for this, you can custom order big sizes. Ampersand, the maker of Aquabord, does require you go through one of their distributors. They don't deal directly. So if you wanted a 40x40 piece, for example, you would have to go to a dealer and request it. And here's a fair warning, I do not represent Ampersand in any way, or Aquabord. This is just a ground that I have used, painted at least 100 pictures on it over the years, and this is strictly for your information, so it's up to you. Now let's take a look at what we have here. I have 3 green apples. This is sort of the undercolor. I still have to do the undercolor on this one. We have a shadow here and the darker background. I went ahead and did these two so we can get started on the background to begin with. Now I think this is yellow-green mostly, or what they're going to be, so I think perhaps red-orange would be the normal background color, and I think I will go with that. So I'm going to use scarlet, deep scarlet, quinacridone scarlet, kind of a rich orangish color, red orangish color, and I may glaze over this and come up with a darker background or drop more paint in it. Now, it probably would be a good idea if I kind of re-wet this background a little bit, particularly since this is such a large area compared to some others. A small area you probably wouldn't have to re-wet it. Now I don't want this sopping, I just want it a little damp down in there so that the water will spread a little more, or the paint will spread a little more smoothly. It's important to keep it kind of wet. This is not Yupo, it doesn't skitter all over the place, but that first coat just doesn't want to do anything but make big bubbles, or, you know, act a little bit Yupo-ish in the sense that it doesn't sink in, it sits on the surface, so your strokes show up. For those of you who are reformed oil painters, you can see the brush strokes if you want. You can in Yupo, something that a lot of oil painters work for. Now, no matter what your style, realistic, abstract, non-representational, this ground still works for you. And I know of quite a few artists in varied styles who do use this. Teresa Kirk, who does a lot of work in Yupo and does represent Aquabord for Ampersand, generally paints in a more abstract and stylized manner. Robin Makowski paints a lot of pictures in that, but her style is generally more realistic. Now, you may find that it's easy to keep working on Aquabord long past when you would be doing that on paper. Mostly because the paint sits up there, you can sit there and dab in other colors as long as it's wet. Like I said, that first coat tends not to go on real smooth. Play with it and you'll get better at it. Obviously, I need more play, but that's the way it goes. Now, I think I'm going to take another color and just kind of drop into it. In fact, what I think I will do is just darken up my red a little bit. So add a little blue to it to neutralize it. A little more purple in the corners, a little darker. And just charge your paint in. Experiment. See if you can get a better result by rolling it or whatever it is that you want to do. That blue that I added to it was a dark blue, Indian Throne, by Daniel Smith. That's the way they call it. There are other pronunciations for different brands or the real pigment name. Come back with a little more of this red and try to smooth it out a little bit. Now I can come over this with a second coat and it will smooth out much more that way. Do want this a little darker because there's going to be a bright yellow at the top of these apples, so a little more contrast there. Now you'll notice I went outside my line here. That's okay. When this dries, I'm just going to come back with this little brush and clean up the edge. Maybe round up this edge a little bit more right here. I use two kinds of brushes. If I have a bigger area, I will use a squirrel blend. Not a pure squirrel because that doesn't have enough spring. Several companies make this. Daniel Smith makes one. One you can find quite easily is Black Velvet by Silver. And Stratford, New York used to make one called Jet. I'm not sure they still do, or if they're even still in business. Okay, let's mix a little bit of a lavender to do this shadow. I'm going to leave the very bottom down here white. So if I spill something on it, I'll have to scrub it with that magic eraser. Let me see. Let's just put a little not too strong of a pink in here. Just a touch more blue. Just keep moving that wet line forward. Now, a little bit of the reflection might be nice. Just the reflected color from the apples. That might be a little heavy. Let's pick up some of it. All right, I think we're going to have to stop here for a minute in order to let these dry so that I could do this apple. And we'll talk about a couple of other techniques and the way you might frame it up or spray it to finish it. Stop. Welcome back. Video. Here we go. Things seem to have dried up some. Now I said before, you can clean up and overpaint just by using one of these little kitty brushes. And we're going to do that right here. If you tend to paint wet, or juicy as they say, like I do, you often will get something over an edge a little bit. If you're a little drier painter, as long as you don't get streaks, this will work quite well. It's around this corner just a bit here too. All right. Let's do the next apple, and then we could start layering. Well, let's just go ahead and start doing layers on this right here. You've already seen how to lay out a wash. All right, I'm going to start glazing on this apple here. And I'm going to use several different greens. Oh, the darkest one is undersea green. This one here is Green Gold by Daniel Smith, and it is a runner. I'll warn you on that right now. And that means if you lay it down in a wet area, it'll take off and look for the other side immediately. I mean, it is a big time runner. So put it down first if you're using it. I'm going to lift back just a little here, soften up this edge. Now, I've not saved any highlights on this, and you'll see why in just a minute. That's because with Aquabord, it's more a put-on, take-off arrangement than it is with most other kinds of painting. Okay, I'm moving to undersea green, which is nothing more than a combination of ultramarine blue and deep Quin Gold. You could duplicate that yourself with using ultramarine blue, Quin Gold, and a little bit of burnt orange. I'm rather fond of the Quin colors. I don't know if you are. Some of you would have more of an earth tone palette or whatever. But I find that they give you transparent or only slightly granular with very bright, clean, saturated colors that stay the same whether they be watered down or full strength. Okay, I'm going to just come in like this and lift it back, try to smooth it out just a little bit. Maybe a touch of a deeper blue, just a little bit of the Indian Throne in here with a touch of brown maybe, just so things aren't quite so brilliant, and kind of mirror some of the color that's up in here. Just a little bit, let's not go overboard. Now, this is the shadowed area of it, and we'll bring in some more of that other green gold here in a minute. Now, when you're painting over top or glazing over top of a color in Aquabord, you have to use a very light touch. Otherwise, you can, because it sits up on the surface, you can wind up picking up the color that's underneath. If the color underneath is a granulating color, that's not particularly good. They do pick up more easily than some of the others. Okay, let's go back to this color. Mix it in here. Aquabord takes longer to dry than paper, but you can paint on it sooner than you can with paper. It feels cool, so it's still wet underneath, but that doesn't mean you can't paint on the top with it. It's one of its advantages. Everything has advantages and disadvantages. So you'll find that when you work on one or the other. Now, when Aquabord is wet, it has kind of a bisque color, but when that dries up, it turns back to white. And if you get this back to white, you pretty well are okay for working on it. All right, let's lift back over here, and we'll put in a highlight. Lift and wipe, and wash your brush out frequently. If you take out too much of a highlight, it's no big deal, you can come back in. I'm going to lift back a little bit right there. Go very gently, and you can lift off the top color without lifting off the bottom. And that's about the basics of painting on it. This needs to be developed a lot more, and you would do that too. So we're going to stop for just a minute. I'm going to go get the varnishes and show you how to varnish a painting. Welcome back. Let's finish this up, wrap it up. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you how you would varnish this and how you would paint and deal with the sides. This is a varnished panel. This is a flat. This is pretty easy. Just take it outside and spray it. And this is what I use. It's a Golden's Archival Varnish. Comes in gloss, satin, and matte. I used to use the matte because I thought it looked more like watercolor, but the gloss really works the best. It's not an extremely shiny gloss. Again, I do not represent Golden. I just found this better than several others that I tried. And I believe this is what Ampersand is now recommending itself. Take it outside, shake it very, very well, and follow the instructions on how you would do a good spraying job. Just from about 12 inches away. Start off the side of the board, go all the way over and back like this. If you're doing a panel, it's a little bit different. Before you ever start painting on the panel, I would strongly recommend you tape off the cradle side. Take that blue tape, ubiquitous blue tape we probably all own, put it all the way around the edge and rub it really good. What this does is keep your panel side, the cradle side, clean. Once you're through painting, before you paint or varnish the sides, you spray this, varnish it, and if you want, put a couple of coats of the liquid on it. It's actually thicker, gives you a taller gloss. Again, comes in the 3 different gloss matte or satin. This can be diluted up to 20%. I have a dedicated brush for it. It's an old sky brush I use for nothing but varnishing. Now this is water soluble until it sets up. So if you want to keep your brush and use it again, as soon as you're through with it, wash it out very, very thoroughly. It's just like any other acrylic. Get rid of all the stuff in it and the brush will keep going. Now before you paint the sides, you do the same thing on these. Tape the side here, spray the top, varnish it. When the varnish is all set up, read the instructions on the side. Now come in on your painting side and very carefully tape off the edges of it. Like this. Rub it down very good at the edges. The reason for doing that is then when you come and varnish the tops, the sides, whatever, you won't get any of that varnish or paint on your very hard-earned painting here. Let it completely dry. If you need to do more than one coat, do more than one coat. I told you what I used here was a clear water-soluble varnish I bought at the hardware store. Brushes right on. I think it's a polyurethane. And I used regular acrylic paint on this. Taped off the side, painted the side, brush painted with acrylic paint, usually takes 2 coats, and then put a coat of clear varnish, this on top of it, just to give it a little bit of a shine. Now, that's basically it. Once you get the hang of painting on it, it looks, you know, your first one you may not like, but just remember, failure is a learning tool. So don't be afraid of screwing up the first time or two. It'll teach you something, and you'll have a whole new ground to paint on that doesn't require glass or matting and stands out, pops up very clearly. So that's basically it. We've gone through how to lay washes and blend them, how to glaze, lifting back, varnishing, and finishing the sides. So I hope you enjoyed having introduction to Aquabord. Thank you.